Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, pull out the key insights, and get you up to speed fast.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're diving into Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Really popular one.
Yeah, definitely. And look, if you're someone who wants to learn efficiently, make positive changes without getting totally overwhelmed, this is basically your shortcut. We're cutting through to the core ideas on forming habits.
And what's really interesting from the get-go is where Clear's ideas come from. It's not just theory. Right.
No, not at all.
It's rooted in his own pretty intense personal experience. He had this terrible accident playing baseball.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. It sounded awful.
Yeah, broken nose, multiple facial fractures. He was even in a coma for a bit. And the recovery, well, was long. Double vision, seizures. He had to relearn basic movements.
Wow. So that recovery process, was it like one big moment or more those tiny steps adding up? Because that seems really relevant to the whole habits thing.
Exactly. From his account, it was the small steps. No single defining moment, just this slow, steady climb built on tiny, consistent improvements each day.
Right.
And that experience, that personal struggle and slow progress, that became the foundation for how he thinks about habits. As he was healing, he started experimenting, consciously trying out small daily routines.
So it wasn't just academic, it was a practical strategy for him.
Totally. And then he started sharing what he was learning online. That was back in November 2012 on his website, jamesclear.com.
And people really connected with it, didn't they? The growth was pretty amazing.
Oh, absolutely. He started with maybe 1,000 email subscribers, but within like a year, end of 2013, he was over 30,000.
That's fast. Shows it was hitting a nerve.
It really does. And it kept snowballing.
Yeah.
By 2014, over 100,000 subscribers. His newsletter became one of the fastest growing ones out there. It's interesting. He actually mentions feeling like an imposter at first, which I think a lot of people can relate to when they start sharing expertise.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome is real.
But his focus on habits, on these small changes, it just resonated. People started seeing him as, the habits guy.
And that consistency, the same thing he learned in recovery, paid off professionally too, right?
Exactly. It's a perfect illustration of his own principles. By 2015, he hit 200,000 subscribers. That led to the book deal with Penguin Random House for Atomic Habits, the very book we're digging into.
And then the speaking gigs started rolling in.
Yep. Major companies wanted him to come talk about habits, behavior change, continuous improvement. His personal journey directly fed into this widely applicable framework.
It really is the core message, isn't it?
Yeah.
Small, consistent actions, whether it's healing or building an audience, they compound. That's the power of these atomic habits.
Think about it like compound interest, but for self-improvement.
Right. A tiny gain, like getting just 1% better each day, seems negligible, right? Like, what's 1%?
It feels like nothing day to day.
But stack that up over a year or several years, and the results are actually huge, exponential.
But the flip side is just as true, unfortunately. Those small, seemingly harmless bad habits, they compound downwards too. A little bit of debt, a missed workout, putting off learning something, it adds up negatively over time.
So how does this show up? Clear talks about lagging measures, which I thought was a neat term.
Yeah, it's basically the idea that your results lag behind your habits. Your bank balance reflects your financial habits, right?
Yeah.
Your weight reflects your eating habits. Your knowledge reflects your learning habits.
Yeah.
Even the clutter in your house reflects your cleaning habits. You get what you repeat, as he says.
It's easy to get discouraged, though, isn't it? You start something new, work out for a week, and you don't suddenly look like a fitness model.
Exactly. And that's where people often stumble.
But Clear says it's that trajectory, that curve of tiny gains or tiny losses that really predicts where you'll be in 10 or 20 years. It forces you to ask those daily questions like, am I spending less than I earn consistently?
Am I actually getting to the gym? Am I reading something, learning something each day? Those small choices dictate the long run.
This ties into what he calls the plateau of latent potential. It's such a key idea.
It really is. Because we expect progress to be, linear, put in effort, see results proportionally.
Yeah, like a straight line upwards.
But with habits, the most meaningful outcomes are often delayed. There's this gap. And that gap, he calls it the valley of disappointment.
That's so relatable, that phase where you are putting in the work, maybe eating healthy, you're exercising, but nothing seems to be changing yet. It feels ineffective.
And that's precisely when most people quit. They think, this isn't working.
Right. But the analogy he uses is brilliant, the ice cube.
Yeah. Explain that one.
So you take an ice cube that's, say, 25 degrees, you start heating it, it goes up to 26, 27, 31 degrees, visually. Nothing's happened. It's still a solid block of ice.
Mm-hmm. All that energy is being put in, but no visible change.
Exactly. The work is being stored, latent potential. Then at 32 degrees, bam, it starts melting. The breakthrough happens.
And that breakthrough, that's the moment everyone sees. The overnight success.
Right. The world sees the dramatic event, the melted ice, but not all the consistent heating from 25 to 31 degrees that came before it. That unseen effort on the plateau, like pressure building up before an earthquake.
It's a powerful way to think about sticking with things when you don't see immediate results. Which leads nicely into his point about systems versus goals.
Yeah, this was a big shift for me. We're so often focused on the goal, the outcome we want. Lose 10 pounds, run a marathon, get a promotion.
Standard goal setting, right?
But Clear argues that the real problem usually isn't the result itself, but the system that produced it. If you're not getting the results you want, the underlying process is probably flawed.
And just fixing the result is temporary, like treating a symptom. If you want lasting change, you've got to fix the system, the inputs.
Fix the inputs and the outputs take care of themselves. That's the idea. A systems-first approach.
He also points out a potential downside to being purely goal-focused, which is interesting.
The happiness thing.
Yeah, that trap of thinking, okay, once I reach this goal, then I'll finally be happy.
Been there. You achieve it, and then immediately you're looking at the next milestone, postponing happiness again.
Right. It creates this perpetual waiting game. And he also mentions goals can create this kind of either-or conflict. You've either achieved it or you haven't, and you're sort of failing until you get there.
Which isn't always the most motivating state to be in.
Definitely not.
So this sets up maybe the most powerful concept in the book for me, identity-based habits.
Oh, yes. This is crucial.
We usually think about habits in terms of outcomes, what we want to achieve, or processes, what we need to do.
Like, I want to lose weight, outcome, or I need to go to the gym, process.
But Clear says the deepest level, the most effective level for change, is identity, focusing on who you wish to become.
Because true behavior change is identity change. It's not just about stopping smoking. It's about becoming a non-smoker.
That's a fundamental shift.
It is. Because, consciously or not, our behaviors tend to reflect who we believe we are, our identity. He mentions that study about voting. People who identify as being a voter are more likely to vote than people who just say they want to vote.
That makes perfect sense. If you see yourself as a healthy person, choosing the salad over the fries isn't a constant battle of willpower. It's just what a healthy person does.
Exactly. When your behavior and identity align, the right action feels natural, easy even. You're just acting like the type of person you already believe yourself to be.
And it becomes a feedback loop, right?
A really powerful one. Your habits shape your identity, and then your identity reinforces your habits.
So the real goal shouldn't just be run a marathon. It should be become a runner.
Precisely. Focus on becoming that type of person. Identity change, he says, is the North Star of habit change.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we build these identity-based habits? This is where he introduces the 4 laws.
Yep, the practical framework. He breaks down any habit, good or bad, into 4 simple steps. Cue, craving, response, reward.
That 4-step loop is the backbone of everything.
It really is. And the brain runs through them in order every time. So first step is the cue.
The trigger.
Right. It's whatever prompts your brain to initiate a behavior. It's basically a little piece of info that predicts a reward is coming.
Back in the day, that was cues for, like, food, water, safety.
Primal stuff. Now, we're often triggered by cues for secondary rewards: money, status, approval, love, friendship. Our minds are constantly scanning the environment for these cues.
Okay, so the cue triggers it. Then comes the craving.
This is the motivation behind the habit. And crucially, it's usually not a craving for the habit itself, but for the change in state it delivers.
Like his example of the smoker, they don't crave the cigarette itself necessarily.
But the feeling of relief or stress reduction it provides. The craving is linked to some deeper motive.
Got it. Cue, craving, then response.
That's the actual habit you perform. Could be a physical action, could even just be a thought. And obviously your ability matters here. You have to actually be able to do the response.
Makes sense. And finally, the reward.
The end goal. This does 2 things. 1, it satisfies the craving that started the whole loop. 2, it teaches your brain, hey, that action was worthwhile. Remember it for next time.
So pleasure is good feedback, disappointment is bad feedback. It closes the loop.
Exactly. And Clear stresses, if any one of these 4 stages is weak or missing, the habit won't stick.
No cue, no trigger, no craving, no motivation. Too hard a response, you can't do it. No satisfying reward, why bother repeating it?
You need all four. It's the fundamental structure.
Okay, let's break down the first law then. Make it obvious. This is all about the cue.
Right. And the very first step here is just awareness. So many of our habits are automatic, non-conscious. We just do them.
He quotes Carl Jung, right? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Which is pretty profound when you think about habits. We react to cues without even realizing it.
So how do we make the unconscious conscious?
He suggests a simple exercise called the habits scorecard. Basically, you just list out your daily habits. Wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee, commute, everything.
Just get it all down on paper.
Yeah. And then you go through and label each one, positive, plus,
Yeah.
negative, or neutral. The act of just listing them forces you to actually see your own behavior.
Raises that awareness level, like that Japanese railway example he uses,
The pointing and calling, yeah, that's fascinating.
where the operators literally point at signals and gauges and call out the status. Signal is green.
Exactly. It sounds odd, but it dramatically reduces errors by making automatic actions conscious and deliberate. It forces them to notice.
So we can kind of point and call our own habits with the scorecard.
Sort of, yeah. Now, building on that awareness, to make the cue more obvious for habits you want to build, he talks about implementation intentions.
This sounds formal, but it's actually super simple.
Totally. It's just deciding in advance when and where you'll act. The formula is, I will behavior at time and location.
Like, I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my living room.
Exactly. That specificity, stating your intention clearly, makes you much more likely to actually do it. It makes the cue, the time, and location really obvious.
And then there's habit stacking. I love this one. It feels very practical.
Me too. It leverages habits you already have. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
So you piggyback the new habit onto an existing one.
Right. Your current habit acts as the cue for the new one. And that habit scorecard you made. That's perfect for finding those solid, existing anchor habits.
Like, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Perfect. The key is choosing the right anchor, something you already do reliably, every day, at the frequency you want for the new habit. Brushing teeth, getting dressed, finishing dinner, lots of options.
This all ties into the huge influence of our environment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That old psychology equation. Behavior is a function of the person and their environment. F-E-P-E. The cues in our environment are incredibly powerful, often shaping our actions without us realizing.
We just go for what's easy, what's obvious.
Think about product placement. Why is Bud Light everywhere? Why is there a Starbucks on every corner? It's not necessarily that they're the best, but they're the most obvious, the most available cue.
Our senses pick up on what's prominent. So, if you want to build good habits,
Make their cues obvious in your environment. Put your running shoes by the door. Put fruit on the counter, not hidden away. Put your guitar stand in the middle of the living room.
he also mentions that habits get tied to the whole context, not just one trigger.
Yeah, the room, the time of day, the people around you.
Yeah.
The entire situation becomes the cue, which is why it can actually be easier to build new habits in a new environment. You're not fighting all those old ingrained cues.
Interesting. So, strategies for making cues obvious include those visual cues, but also designing your space.
Definitely. He's big on one space, one use. Try not to work in the same place you relax, or eat in the same place you work. Having distinct environments helps make the cue for the intended activity clearer.
Like having a dedicated office space, even if it's just a corner, helps cue work mode.
Exactly. He talks about his own experience with that. And the flip side is, try not to mix the context of different habits. It can blur the cues. And for bad habits, make their cues invisible, reduce exposure, hide the junk food, delete the distracting apps.
Okay, that's law 1. Make it obvious. Let's move to law 2. Make it attractive. This focuses on the craving.
Right. The basic idea is simple. The more appealing, the more attractive a habit seems, the more likely we are to do it. Our brains are wired to chase pleasure.
So how do we make beneficial habits more attractive? He suggests temptation bundling.
Yeah, this is a clever one. You pair something you want to do with something you need to do.
The formula being, after I habit I need, I will habit I want.
So maybe. After I answer my emails need, I will check social media want. Or only when I'm at the gym need, I get to listen to my favorite podcast want.
Links the less desirable task to an immediate reward, making it more attractive.
Exactly. Another huge factor in attractiveness is social norms. We're social creatures, right? We want to fit in, gain approval.
Totally herd animals.
So Behaviors are more attractive if they help us fit in, and Clear says we tend to imitate three groups in particular.
Okay, who are they?
The close of our family and friends. Their habits rub off on us significantly.
Makes sense.
Our culture, our tribe, we adopt behaviors that are considered normal within our group.
Right, keeping up with the Joneses or just fitting in.
And the powerful, those with status and prestige. We often imitate habits associated with success or high standing.
He uses the example of smoking, often starting with friends, right? The influence of the close group.
Yeah, a classic example.
Oh.
And conversely, he mentions people quitting smoking using Alan Carr's book, which works partly by reframing smoking, making the cues seem unattractive.
Ah, so reframing is another technique here, changing how you think about a habit.
Exactly. You can consciously shift your perspective. Instead of, I have to go for a run, think I get to build my fitness, it changes the feeling associated with it.
Turn obligation into opportunity. He even suggests reframing anxiety as excitement.
Yeah, like pre-performance jitters. Telling yourself, I'm excited, instead of I'm nervous, can actually change your physiological response and make the experience more positive, more attractive.
One last point on attractiveness, he warns about motion versus action.
Oh yeah, this is a big one. Motion is planning, strategizing, learning, but not actually doing the thing.
And like researching the best running shoes for weeks instead of just going for a run.
Exactly. Action is the behavior that delivers an outcome. Motion feels productive, and it helps us avoid the potential failure that comes with action, but it doesn't actually move the needle. Need to focus on action.
Got it. So law 3, make it easy. This is about the response.
The core idea. The less friction, the less effort a habit requires, the more likely you are to do it.
Yeah.
Human nature leans towards the path of least resistance.
So make good habits easy, make bad habits hard.
Precisely. Reduce the steps, the hassle for the things you want to do, add steps, add friction for things you want to avoid.
He also makes a point here that habits form based on frequency, not time.
Right. It's not about spending hours on something once a week. It's about how many repetitions you get in. Doing something small, consistently, builds the habit faster than doing something big, inconsistently.
That repetition grooves the pathway in your brain.
Exactly. And he talks about decisive moments, these little choices throughout the day that set you on one path versus another.
Like deciding whether to walk into the kitchen or the living room when you get home. That choice might determine whether you grab a snack or sit down to read.
Mastering those small, seemingly insignificant choices is key because they dictate what options are available to you next.
Which leads directly to the 2-minute rule.
Probably one of the most practical takeaways from the book. The rule is, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
Scale it down ridiculously small.
Totally. Want to read more? Goal, read 1 page. Want to exercise? Goal, do 2 push-ups. Want to meditate? Goal, meditate for 1 minute.
The point isn't the outcome initially, it's just making it incredibly easy to start.
Yes. Master the art of showing up. Make the beginning effortless. These become gateway habits that lead you down more productive paths naturally. And his point is crucial. Doing less than you hoped is way better than doing nothing at all.
Build the consistency first, then you can scale up.
Exactly. Once the habit of showing up is established, then you can use habit shaping to gradually increase the duration or difficulty. But you need to standardize the habit first. You can't optimize something that doesn't exist.
Makes sense. Standardize before you optimize.
And on the flip side, making bad habits difficult. He talks about making good habits almost inevitable and bad habits almost impossible.
Using commitment devices or automation.
Yeah, things like automatic bill pay, automatic savings transfers, using technology to lock in good behavior. Or for bad habits, website blockers, apps that limit screen time, physically putting your phone in another room. Increase the friction.
He quotes Whitehead. Civilization advances by extending the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them. Automation simplifies things.
And that story about Patterson and the cash register.
Oh yeah, the store owner dealing with employee theft.
He found this machine, Riddy's incorruptible cashier, which basically made it impossible to steal without leaving a record. By making the bad habit impractical, he essentially eliminated it, added massive friction.
A great illustration. And one more strategy for making things easy, priming the environment.
Right. Preparing your space for future use, like laying out your workout clothes the night before, or the resetting the room idea.
Cleaning up immediately after an activity, putting things back so the space is ready for the next time.
It reduces the friction for the next action. Those decisive moments are easier to navigate if the environment is already prepped for the good habit.
Okay, final law, law 4. Make it satisfying. This focuses on the reward.
And this is critical because what gets rewarded gets repeated. We're more likely to do something again if the experience feels good.
The catch is, our brains evolved to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed ones.
Exactly. We live in a delayed return environment. Now, exercise today, benefits come later. Save money now, enjoy retirement later. But our brains are still wired for the immediate return environment of our ancestors, where cause and effect were much closer together.
Which explains why bad habits are often so tempting, right?
Totally. The reward for smoking, eating junk food, procrastinating, it's immediate. The negative consequences, those are usually delayed.
So we can't just rely on willpower or good intentions for the good habits.
Nope. We need to find ways to make the good habits immediately satisfying and the bad habits immediately unsatisfying. Hack that reward system.
How do we make good habits immediately satisfying? Reinforcement.
Yeah, adding a little immediate reward right after you complete the habit. He gives that example of the couple saving for a trip to Europe.
Every time they skipped eating out and cooked at home, they transferred a set amount of money into their Europe fund.
Right. It made the act of not eating out immediately rewarding. The key is that the reward should ideally reinforce your desired identity too. Saving for a trip feels better than just, say, eating a candy bar as a reward for exercising.
Another powerful tool for satisfaction is simply tracking your habits.
Oh, absolutely. Tracking works for several reasons. One, it provides visual proof of your progress. Seeing that chain of X's on a calendar is motivating.
You don't want to break the streak.
Exactly. That's motivating in itself. And second, the act of tracking itself, crossing something off a list, marking that X feels satisfying. It's a small, immediate reward.
Okay, and how about making bad habits immediately unsatisfying?
Accountability is huge here. Having an accountability partner or using a habit contract.
A formal agreement with consequences.
Yeah, you basically raise the stakes, make the cost of skipping your good habit or doing your bad habit immediate and painful in some way. Public shame, financial penalty. He mentions Roger Fisher's wild idea about nuclear codes.
Having leaders carry them personally so the consequences are immediate and visceral.
A bit extreme, but it illustrates the principle. A more practical example is the guy, Brian Harris, who made a contract with his wife and trainer to lose weight, with serious financial penalties if he failed.
Even just knowing someone else is watching can be enough, right? Like Margaret Cho's Song a Day challenge with her friend.
Just that awareness that someone will know if you slip up adds immediate social cost to failing. It makes the bad habit less satisfying.
So those are the 4 laws. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. But he goes beyond that into advanced tactics for going from good to great.
Right. One key idea is aligning habits with your natural talents and predispositions. Genes don't determine everything, but they do nudge you in certain directions.
Play to your strengths.
Exactly. Choose habits that suit you. If you're naturally introverted, maybe building a habit around public speaking is going to be way harder than building one around writing. Find the game where the odds are in your favor or create one.
Makes sense. Work with your nature, not constantly against it. He also talks about the Goldilocks rule.
Yeah. Staying motivated requires working on tasks that are right at the edge of your current abilities. Not too easy, it's boring. Not too hard, that's discouraging.
Just challenging enough to keep you engaged to hit that flow state. Around 4% beyond your current level is the suggestion.
Right. But even if you find that sweet spot, the biggest threat long-term isn't failure, it's actually
Boredom.
boredom. As habits become automatic, routine, they just become less interesting. You lose that initial spark.
And this is where amateurs differ from professionals.
That's his point. Professionals stick to the schedule even when they're bored. Amateurs let life, or boredom, get in the way. The ability to show up when it's not exciting is crucial for mastery.
How do you fight boredom, though?
He mentions variable rewards, like slot machines use. That unpredictability keeps things engaging. Finding ways to introduce novelty or track different metrics can help. The sweet spot of desire seems to be when success and failure are roughly equally likely.
And just generally the need for reflection.
Continuous improvement. Regularly review your habits. Are they still serving you? Do they need adjustment? It's not a set it and forget it process.
Interestingly, he also points out potential downsides to good habits.
Yeah, they can make you mindless. Once something is automatic, you might stop paying attention and miss errors or opportunities for improvement. Complacency can set in.
Like the pointing and calling system is designed to combat that very mindlessness.
Exactly. And identity, which is so helpful initially, can also hold you back later.
How so?
Once you strongly identify as a certain type of person, You might resist information or opportunities that challenge that identity. Pride can make you deny weak spots. You need to stay flexible, willing to redefine yourself as you grow.
That's a really nuanced point. So, wrapping up, what's the secret to lasting results?
Patience, mostly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Understand that big things come from small beginnings. Every habit starts with one tiny action.
The seed of the oak tree.
Right. And he brings up satisfaction again, defining it as liking minus wanting. Finding contentment often involves reducing your desires, appreciating what you have, rather than constantly chasing more.
True contentment comes when you like what you have.
Ultimately, habits are the path. They are the small steps that build day by day towards the future you want.
Okay, so as we wrap this deep dive on atomic habits, let's quickly hit the highlights.
Yeah, definitely the power of those tiny 1% improvements compounding over time. Huge takeaway.
And shifting focus from just goals to building effective systems, that feels fundamental.
Plus, the crucial role of identity, changing who you believe you are, not just what you do.
And of course, the 4 laws as the practical toolkit. Make it obvious,
Make it attractive.
make it easy.
And make it satisfying. Applying those really gives you levers to pull.
We also touched on those advanced ideas aligning with strength, the Goldilocks zone, fighting boredom, and the need for reflection.
Right, so for you listening, hopefully this gives you a really practical, efficient way to think about making changes. It's not about massive, overwhelming shifts.
No, it's about understanding the mechanics and using them deliberately. A toolkit for building a better life, really, one small habit at a time.
Exactly.
So here's something to chew on. Think about one small habit you've been meaning to start, or maybe one you want to stop. How could you apply just one of those 4 laws right now to nudge things in the right direction?
Yeah, what's the tiniest step you could take today to make it more obvious, attractive, easy, or satisfying? Or the opposite for a bad habit?
Just one little thing. Definitely check out James Clear's work if this resonated. The science of behavior change is fascinating. It's an ongoing journey.
For sure. Hope this deep dive gave you a solid place to start.